Hey guys, and welcome back to a Now for Something a Little Bit Different, episode 57. I hope everybody is doing great and having a wonderful weekend. Today, guys, I'm proud to be talking about um, a piece of property uh, that has been in my heart, near and dear to me for many, many years. And that's why I showed you, to start off with, the book, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo. I was introduced to me by a good buddy of mine, Daryl, who is a very near and dear friend to me. And this is probably about in 2000, 2001. This book's probably about 1,079 pages of just the book, and then there's another 50 pages of notes. So, yeah, give or take about 1,100 pages. And since then, I religiously read this book probably every 2 to maybe 3 years. And part of the reason I do that is because it's just so near and dear to my heart. It is one of those books that just grips at you and just sucks you into the world of just really rich and deep characters that you fall for, and you just want to just follow their journeys. And the book is absolutely incredible. Um, there's so much to offer. Um, there have been numerous TV adaptations, and there have been numerous film adaptations, which I'll talk about in just a second. But the book is something special. And it's one I highly recommend. Now, if you can't commit to the world of Mr. Dumas in 1,079 pages, then there is an abridged version of this. And the abridged version is probably, I've never read the abridged version actually. This is the unabridged version. The abridged version, I believe, is at the 500 mark, maybe 600 mark. Um, so I one day will break down and do that. But I have this philosophy, and maybe it's not the best one. And it's kind of like, I'm sure it's good. I know people that have read it. That's good. It kind of distills things a little bit more, cuts out some of the subplots from what I understand. But my philosophy is this: there's nothing wrong with decaf coffee. We all know that, right? But on the same token, the whole point of coffee is you want something warm and you want something that's going to give you a little pep in your step. Um, so I'm we'll eventually get to the abridged version of the book. Um, but why run out of my way? Why go out of my way to get to it? You know what I mean? I want that. I want that caffeine. I want that full kick, and that's what the novel gives you. It gives you that full kick. Um, Same thing with frozen pizza, guys. There's nothing wrong with it. I've eaten it many times. It does the job. But when you got a good Italian restaurant right down the road, you want the real deal, especially if you're in Jersey, guys. So anyway, that's my bad analogy, but I'm going to go with it. So before I get into the actual film that I'm going to be talking about today, which is, if I can find it, because I just have it, the 2024 version of The Count of Monte Cristo, the movie. This is the most recent adaptation. I can make words, guys. Out of France. There is also a mini series that debuted in December, not related to that. I think it's going to make its American debut probably sometime in the next few months, and that's going to be a mini series. I know the actor Sam Claflin's going to be in it, as well as Jeremy Irons. So those are the most recent adaptations. But before I get into that particular movie, because that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about, I have watched a couple things, and I didn't write any notes because I was really putting a lot of work um, into this film review for you guys, um, and because this thing just I want to try to nail it. It's I know the last couple episodes I've been trying to not do a complete script breakdown and just try to give you the bare bones, give you a synopsis, give you some details, but not go too hardcore. Um, and that's the philosophy I'm going to try to going forward. I'm going to try to do my reviews like that. This particular film, guys, I'm not going to give you a beat by beat, um, but I'm going to get pretty close to that because you really this film is really difficult um, to just give you the bare bones. I don't want to give too much away, but I'm going to cover a lot. So be warned, guys. There are some heavy spoilers coming your way. Um, Now, for those interested, if you live in the city, like a major city, you can find this because it's still playing in the movie theaters. It came to theaters December 24th um, in America. Um, It'll probably be on VOD or Blu-ray within the next couple months because it seems like everything is. So that's an option. Those are two options. If you live near a city, check out the listing. You might be able to find it at your local theater, maybe your art house theater. I was thinking about going up to New York. New York's about an hour and a half away, because it's actually playing at the AMC Empire 25, which is like 25 screens. And I was thinking about making a trip up there and seeing a couple of Korean films and making a day of it. But it gets kind of expensive, you know. So I opted against that. Now, if you guys have a region-free Blu-ray player, you can pick this up pretty cheaply. I've seen it for like 20, 25 bucks on Amazon. Um, Also, obviously, Amazon UK. It's on eBay. So if you're in Europe, you can get a hold of this thing pretty easily. Or if you're in America, and if you have a region-free player, you can also get a hold of this film pretty easy. So you have some different options as far as viewing goes. Um, all that said, I didn't see a lot, and I didn't write notes on what I saw, so I apologize, guys. I'm gonna just kind of go in blind here. Um, and I'm gonna just mention a couple things. One thing I will have to big shout out to Brad and Troy from the Not a Bomb podcast. They had a gentleman, Michael Neal, I want to say your name is Michael. Hopefully I got that right. And he guested with Brad and Troy, um, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they talked about an anime film, a science fiction film called Mars Express. And the general premise is it's the future, and technology has become such an integrated part of our society, and there's robots and what have you not, and it just normal technology is gotten a little bit wacky, and basically the short version is they've gotten to a point where they've um, kind of been lowjacked essentially, or broken into. Looking for the right word here because I didn't write anything down. They've been hacked, um, and they've got like free will, and basically they're basically they're going against their direct order, which is to serve mankind, and it's become an issue. And now there's going to be like this big crisis point, um, where effectively the robots are trying to assert free will, and basically our main protagonists are trying to stop that from happening. But you're also seeing things from the sides of the robots as well. Um, it's a really interesting film, really beautifully animated. Um, I think it's out through G Kids. I picked up the Blu-ray on Amazon. If you have Crunchyroll, you might find it on Crunchyroll. Again, I'm just very quickly giving you guys a quick synopsis based off of what I remember from watching it last night. So I apologize. It's not the best synopsis of this film. If you want a much better version of that, where there's a really nice discussion being had, go check out my friends Troy and Brad over at Not a Bomb because they do a really great discussion um, about the film, and they really break it down, and they do a fantastic job. So I saw that last night, and then earlier in the week I saw a movie that he's one of these actors, right? So years ago I saw him. Okay, not a bad guy, does a lot of the same type of thing, but he's fun, and he's good, right? And then after a while, he kind of seems to repeat the same type of film over and over, for the most part. Couple gems, maybe here and there, but still, I'm still a fan. So I saw Den of Thieves finally, the first one, and it's Gerard Butler. That's what I'm talking about. He's one of these guys. I joked online. He's the illegitimate son of Mel Gibson, and basically Mel Gibson and the Russell Crowe. Basically, he's like the illegitimate, version of their son, basically, and that's what he kind of gives you that vibe, right? A little bit younger version of them. Maybe not so much younger these days, guys. He's getting up there, but and Den of Thieves, the first film is basically a story about a cop that's trying to take out these guys that are trying to pull off the heist. And obviously, it's a little more complicated than that. Um, you got some good acting going on. Who's cast? I can't remember, guys, because it's how bad I am today. Uh, I want to say it's Ice Cube's son. I'm sorry, I should actually know his name. But anyway, I'm going to call him Ice Cube's son because I'm pretty sure that's who it is. Um, and then yesterday, I saw Den of Thieves 2, which is pretty much this a lot of the ideas from the first film. But this time they're going after him. Gerard Butler's going after the main character, Ice Cube's son, again, because at the end of the first movie, he got away. So this place takes place in Europe, and he's going undercover, and he's trying to take him down. It kind of gives me a vibe, a little bit of, if you guys, I'm sure you've all seen at some point some of the Fast and Furious movies. The first one started off as this one thing, and then by the time you got to like part 12, I'm sorry, they're at part 10. Not I was going to say part 12, but they just got crazier and crazier. Well, you can kind of see in the second film, they're kind of like going towards that angle. Even some of the same ideas and some of the same friendships are there. And again, guys, I'm really giving you really piss poor synopsis here, so I apologize. I didn't have a lot of time to see a lot, guys. Sadly, we started back up work last week, and I don't have a lot of time in the morning. And believe it or not, even though I may not sound like after listening to this video, guys, I spent a lot of time um, writing and trying to get another couple of viewings of this movie we're talking about today in because it's a 3-hour movie, and I just don't have a lot of time in my hands. Um, and I'm also going to talk to you briefly um, about the book and Mr. Alexander Dumas. So that's what I watched. Again, I apologize. I normally take down notes on what I watched to give you a much more detailed and much more organized synopsis. So I do apologize. Um, I'm going to talk to you. Give me 1 second, guys, because of course I have my cheat sheet. Without it, I'd be lost. And when I say my cheat sheet, I say my little digital notebook here. Um, and I'm going to start by talking about the book. All right. So Alexander Dumas was born in 1802 and he passed away in 1870. Um, and he's a writer known for writing plays, novels, and short stories. He's best known for work such as The Three Musketeers, of course, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, here's one I didn't realize, guys. Apparently, he wrote Robin Hood. I had no idea. The Nutcracker, another one I had no idea. 20 years after, and The Black Tulip. So again, I'm not going to give you too much information, but I wanted to talk a little bit about him. I think he led a pretty interesting life, and I think some of his works um, definitely deserve more attention. I mean, there's a reason why they keep doing Count of Monte Cristo and Three Musketeers, and because his work is very endearing. There's themes that I think that are interesting and that draw people in. Stories about redemption, stories about friendship, stories about love, sometimes stories about revenge or justice. You know, um, he talks about universal themes, and he's able to do it in a way that's very, very well written. So that's a little bit about our man. Just bear with me here for a second, guys. Again, uh, sorry here. I'm scrolling through the notebook. All right. So that's a little bit about Alexander Dumas. Again, I'm not going to go into everything about his life because if I did, he led a very interesting life. If I did, we'd be here all day. Um, so I'm not going to do that. Next thing I want to talk to you guys about, because a lot of people don't realize this, but the Count of Monte Cristo is very loosely based off of a real story. And I'm going to just read you from the book here, a page or two about the real life story. Now, one of the reasons I have this tattered old copy, this is the Penguin edition, by the way, guys, if you're looking. It has a really good introduction that tells the story about the real life story. And apparently also has a really good translation. So that's mainly the reason I've held on to this for so long. So I'm going to read to you about that right now here. Uh, So the plot was inspired by the true life story of Francis Picard, which Dumas found in Jackass. Yeah, Jackass. Get ready to me to butcher some French language here, guys. Jacques Picard's Police de Voler Memoirs. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one today, guys. I'm gonna earn that title of the butcher. All right. So basically, this guy Jacques Picard's Police Memoirs. It's basically a collection of anecdotes from the Parisian police archives. Um, Briefly, the story is Picard, a young man from the south of France, was imprisoned in 1807, having been denounced by a group of friends as an English spy. Shortly thereafter, uh, shortly after he had become engaged to a young woman named Marguerite. The denunciation was inspired by a cafe owner, Matthew Lapoyen, who was jealous of Picard's relationship with Marguerite. Picard was eventually moved to a form of house arrest in Piedmont and shut up in the castle of Fernalestaz, where he served as a servant to a rich Italian cleric. When the man died, abandoned by his family, he left his money to Picard, whom he had come to treat as a son, also informing him of the whereabouts of a hidden treasure. With the fall of Napoleon in 1814, Picard, now called Joseph Lusher, was released in the following year. After collecting the hidden treasure, he returned to Paris. Here he discovered that Marguerite had married Lupin, um, disguising himself and offering a valuable diamond to Alut, the one man in the group who had been unwilling to collaborate in the denunciation. He learned the identity of his enemies. He then set about eliminating them, stabbing the first with a dagger on which were printed the words "Number One," and burning down Lupin's cafe. He managed to find employment in Lupin's house, disguised as a servant called Prosper. However, while this was going on, Alut had fallen out with the merchant to whom he had sold the diamond, had murdered him, and had been imprisoned. Uh, on coming out of jail, he started to blackmail Picard. Picard poisoned another of the conspirators, lured Lupin's son into crime and his daughter into prostitution, and then finally stabbed Lupin himself. But he quarreled with Alut over the blackmail payments, and Alut killed him, confessing the whole story on his deathbed in 1828. So it's interesting, at least to me. There are some inspirations from real life history, and obviously, um, if you've seen any of the versions of The Count of Monte Cristo or you read the book, obviously, there's a lot more deviations and there's a lot of other things going on. For dramatic effect, it's not going to be that close to the real life story. But I think it is interesting. I do apologize because I don't normally read directly from books. I've been using my notebook, um, and the printing was kind of small, so I'm sitting there trying to struggle to read there. So if it's a little off, I do apologize. If you're interested in finding out more about the real life history, guys, just look it up, and you can get like a detailed history. It's really pretty interesting. So next, I should mention to you guys, apparently, this book was adopted 29 times. There's been different adaptations, guys, and we're talking uh, television, stage, film, and miniseries. So I think that's another thing that's interesting. Just bear with me, guys. Yeah, at least 29 different versions have been adopted into film and television. So for me personally, I was trying to dig out because I have quite a few of these, not 29 of them, but I have quite a few on DVD or Blu-ray. Different ones that I've seen. Obviously, the one I'm talking about today, guys, the 2024 film. Um, I saw the 1934 version with Robert Donay. Um, I've seen the 1975 television version with Richard Chamberlain. The 1998 miniseries with Gerard Depardieu. Um, I've seen the 2002 version with Mr. Jim Caviezel, uh, the Count of Monte Cristo, the 1979 TV miniseries. Now, this stars Mr. Jacques Weber, and that one, guys, is very difficult to find with English subtitles, um, at least physical copy. If you search in Google, you will find that I think it's like a Russian YouTube or something like that. I know it sounds kind of sketchy, but I did watch it. It's 5 hours. There's nothing wrong. Nothing bad happens. Um, but yeah, it's like I think it's like equivalent to like a Russian YouTube essentially. Um, and that was the only way I could find that version. But that version is very, very good. And then in 2004, there was an anime series. It was only one season, and I'm gonna fuck up the name here. It was called Genkususo. Genkususo. Oh man, I'm really fucking things up here, guys. I apologize. And this is like an interesting take on that Count of Monte Cristo because there's like a science fiction element. Um, it's really dark. Our main character, Edmond Dantes, or the Count, looks like he's like a fucking vampire. It's really weird. I wouldn't say it's a mind blowing, but if you like anime and you like Count of Monte Cristo, um, even if you don't, check it out. I think that's interesting. Now, of these different versions that I just listed, they're all worth watching. I mean, I even give shit. I give a lot of shit to the Jim Caviezel one. The reason I give a lot of shits to Jim Caviezel one, which came out in 2002, is I had just read probably for the second time the book, and I was excited for that fucking movie. And Caviezel isn't god awful. The best thing about that film is Guy Pearce playing Ferdinand de Morcerf. He is awesome. But then again, Guy Pearce is a guy that should have a much bigger career. He's to me, he's one of those guys. He really should have taken off like Crow and a lot of these other guys. Which isn't to say that he doesn't have a career. He has a very good career. But damn, he takes this film, which again, take this with a grain of salt. To me, this film was a bit of a turd. Um, but the part that he has, he does it well. And again, when I say this film is a bit of a turd, guys, if you have never read the book or if you're a mature adult, you can separate the fact that a book is different from the film. Like I said, I had just read the book for the second time. Um, this movie's probably about 2 hours. It's not bad. They just butcher so many key points of the actual novel. And I know some of you guys are saying, well, John, you got to be able to separate the difference between a book and a film. They're two different mediums and blah, 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 blah. And guys, I get that. I do. I do. I understand they're two different mediums. But on the same token, you have to get the core elements down. And if you can't get the core elements down, then what are you doing? Um, but again, if it, this is my rant about that version. It's not god awful. It is enjoyable if you're mature enough to separate the two. Um, for me, that's very difficult, guys. I know if you do this kind of thing where you're talking about films you love or comic books or even a video game, whatever it is, guys, and you're trying to talk about it, I don't even call this a review. Me talking to you guys, having a friendly conversation. Mind, me and my big mouth are doing all the talking, but regardless, they say you're supposed to be biased or you're not supposed to be biased, right? And the thing is, guys, I know you're not supposed to be biased, but I kind of think that's bullshit because if you love something, it's hard not to be biased. And if you know there's something that's a much better version of it out there, it's hard to just put that to the side, at least for me. And I think if most people are being honest, I think most people, again, I don't want to speak on anyone else's behalf, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that if you love something, it's hard not to be biased. Anyway, it's not a horrible film. I've come around to that film. I'm not in love with that film, but it's not horrible. Um, so the two that I would recommend that I think are worth your time, besides the one I'm going to talk to you about today, everything on here is worth a watch. The the 1979 one, just Google it, you'll find it. It's great. Also, the Richard Chamberlain one that came out in '75. is also pretty damn good. Not perfect, but good. Even the 1934 one, it's light, it's breezy, it's fun. It does a pretty good job. Now, like I said, there's 29 versions of this film that have been adopted just in the television and film. There's also a musical. Um, there's a straight dramatic play that was done without the music, a non-musical that have been done in many different places overseas in America. So this thing's been, it's got its fair amount of versions that have been adopted, guys. So just bear with me here, guys. Uh, all right, so I've talked to you a little bit about the book. Talked to you a little bit about Mr. Alexander Dumas. Now, guys, I'm going to talk to you about the actual movie. So this movie came out in 2024. I want to say it came out in like maybe March or April in France, guys. Um, it was shot for I think about $42 million. I think right now total it's up to about 75 million. I believe that's just what it made overseas. Um, in America, like I said, it was just released December 24th. So I don't have the the gross for what it made here in America yet. Um, I hope it does well over here. Um, but I can tell you this much. If you live in New Jersey and you have to travel all the way up to New York City, that's the nearest place to see it on the big screen. That means it didn't get a wide release, which is unfortunate because this film, I think, would have been great if it had gotten a wide release. Still not sure if it would have kicked butt at the box office because you never know what's gonna fail or succeed at the box office these days. You really don't. Maybe if it's Sonic the Hedgehog, which I rather enjoyed, by the way, so no diss against Sonic, then you're guaranteed a win, or something along those lines. Um, but you really don't know what's gonna kick ass at the box office or what's not. It's not like the old days where that you kind of take a guess and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's pretty sure that's gonna do well, or yeah, I don't know about this one. Maybe we should stick it in February, or we don't care if it does well or bombs. Anyway, so this film, yeah, was released last year, March, April of 2024. It's about 2 hours and 58 minutes. So, guys, it is a long movie. It's directed by two gentlemen. A guy named, and again, guys, the butcher's coming in to warn you. He's going to be worse than normal, guys. I have a hard enough time pronouncing American names, but when it comes to French names, I just hope France forgives me, and I hope you guys forgive me because I'm going to be really fucking up some names here today, guys. But anyway, it's going to be direct. This film is directed by two guys, Alexander de la Patelaine, um, and also, bear with me, Matthew Delaporte. These guys have worked on three films together. Um, Now, Alexander de Patelier, he's worked on films like What's in a Name, The Best, which came out in 2012, The Best Is Yet to Come, which came out in 2019, and of course, The Count of Monte Cristo in 2024. Those are some films that he's worked on. He was also a writer on The Three Musketeers that came out in 2023, part one and two. Now, he didn't direct those films, but he was a writer and a producer. So that's a little bit about our first director, Alexander de Patelier. And then Matthew Delaporte, um, he's done three films with the other gentleman, Alexander, but he's also done a film called The Jungle, which came out in 2006. What's in Her Name, of course, in 2012. Nobody from Nowhere in 2014. The Best Is Yet to Come in 2019. And again, he also helped write the count. He also helped write the Three Musketeers movies, the ones that came out of France in 2023. He helped write and produce part one and two. Um, so these guys have quite a few credits to their name as far as writing and producing. Um, the thing is, guys, when I'm doing this one today, there's several cast members. And because there's several cast members, I'm not going to go over like several of their films for a couple of reasons. Because A, there's several cast members, and B, not to be a jerk or anything, but a lot of these films are films we may not recognize. They're out of France, and I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't recognize a lot of them. Maybe you guys are more up on top of the French cinema. Um, but I'm still gonna give you a couple films they worked on, like two or three ones that are considered the more well-known films. And hey, maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you're not. Um, but because the cast is so large, if I were to focus on several films that each cast member did, we'd be here all night. So so that's our two directors. Bear with me here, guys. Looking at my cheat sheet here. Try not to be too obvious. Uh, our cinematographer is a gentleman named Nicholas Bolduc. Nicholas Bolduc has worked on stuff like How My Mother Gave Birth to Me During Menopause in 2003. Now, there's a catchy tongue twister for you, and quite a title right there. How My Mother Gave Birth to Me During Menopause. Now that alone, I'm just curious. The title alone, guys. Eve and the Fire Hose, which came out in 2005. The City of Shadows, which came out in 2010. And here's one for you. He worked on the Denis Villeneuve film, Enemy, excuse me, in 2013. So there's one that was a little indie film that came out. Oh, he also was a cinematographer again on The Three Musketeers Part 1 and 2 in 2023. Um, when it comes to our editors, we actually have two editors, guys. We have a lady named Celia Lafitte Dupont. She worked on films like School's Out in 2008, In the Beginning in 2009, What's in a Name in 2012. So she has a pass with our directors here. Nobody from Nowhere in 2014. And she worked on Three Musketeers Part 1 in 2023. Co-editing the film, we have a lady, Sarah Turnot. She worked on films like Tarpan in 2015, La Foyer in 2017, and The Best Is Yet to Come in 2019. Now, again, guys, these everyone that I mentioned here, they have worked on more films than just the handful that I'm listing off here. Again, I just don't have time, nor do I want to bore you guys too much with everything they've done. So, when we get to our main cast, starring in the role of Mr. Edmond Dantes, the Count of Monte Cristo himself, we have a gentleman named Pierre Nini. Now, I actually I saw one of his films, guys. It's on, I want to say it's on Tubi, and it is called, just bear with me, guys. Uh, Nobody from Nowhere in 2014. It's on Tubi. I didn't talk about it. I probably should have talked about it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about excuse me, guys, my throat is just dry here. A little bit about, I wanted to do a little research. I wanted to see something from some of these people because I wasn't familiar with any of our actors. So I did find something from him, this Nobody from Nowhere, which is an interesting film. It's a thriller. I'll talk about it for 2 seconds. Basically, our main guy, Pierre Nini, plays this guy who leads a very boring and dull existence as a real estate agent. Secretly, he follows people around. This is his hobby. He follows people around, and if he's somebody interesting, and then he'll dress up like them and try to be an imposter. He'll try to live in their life. Well, that's the premise from that film I just talked about, Nobody from Nowhere. Of course, the film spirals because he finds a celebrity and things take a very dark turn. And again, very brief synopsis, guys, because I want to talk about the film. I kind of derailed. I know you guys, if you've been listening to my show, watching my show, you know I derail. Um, Check that out on Tubi, though. It's another film that's worth your while. It's one I also managed to squeeze in during the week when I was at work. So Pierre Nini playing Edmond Dantes. All right, back on track. I promise, guys. Um, just bear with me. Okay. Hold on. So some interesting things about him. He's actually won a Caesar Award. Now, over in France, that's basically the equivalent of the Academy Award. And he won that for a film called Yves Saint Laurent in 2015. He won Best Actor. Um, he's known for films like Army of Crime in 2009, Black Heaven in 2010, A Perfect Man in 2015. He was also nominated for a film called France in 2016, and that's spelled Frantz, not France as in the country. That was in 2016. 18 years old and Rising in 2011, which is also another film that he got nominated for a Caesar Award, and nominated for a film called Black Box in 2021. Again, yet another film that he was nominated for a Caesar Award. Um, so this guy apparently must be pretty decent, guys, because over there he's getting nominated for all sorts of awards. Now, I will say ahead of time, again, yes, I'm biased. I love the Count of Monte Cristo, but having seen several versions of the book adapted at this point, this gentleman, Mr. Pierre Nini, definitely did a very good job of portraying our main character. So my hats go off to you, Mr. Pierre Nini, um, playing the role of his love interest, the lovely Mercedes. We have an actress named Agnès de Mostier. Bear with me here. Um, some films she's done in France, Time of the Wolf in 2003, a film called Hellphone in 2007, The Snows of Kilimanjaro in 2011, and All About Them in 2015. Um, next, playing Fernand de Morcerf. I can get names, I promise, guys. Fernand de Morcerf. We have a gentleman named Bastien Boulanger. Bastien Boulard. And Bastien Boulard has also won a Caesar Award in 2022 for a film called The Night of the Twelfth. He's also been in films like a film called Hand in Hand in 2012 and High Society in 2014. Now, Fernand de Morcerf is the cousin to the lovely Mercedes, our love interest to Dante. And like I said, he's also secretly in love with Mercedes, which plays a part in our plot. Playing in the role of Danglers, we have a gentleman named Patrick Mill. Patrick Mill has been in films like My Father, the Hero in 91, People in 2004, and The Jungle in 2006. He also appeared in Three Musketeers Parts 1 and 2 in 2023. Also, we next have Caderousse. Caderousse is part of the conspiracy that sends Mr. Edmond Dantes to jail. He is played by the actor Steven Varapune. And I know I fucked that one up. I apologize, Mr. Steven. You might have seen him in the French film The Last Hammer Blow in 2014. He was in the film Chocolat in 2016 and Quartet in 2015. Next, we have an actor, Mr. Laurent Lafitte. Now, he's playing the role of Gerard de Villefort, Mr. Gerard de Villefort. He is a prosecutor for the local government, and he also plays a hand in sending Edmond Dantes away to jail. He was in films like Elle in 2016, The Little Prince, the animated film in 2015, and here's one for you guys. If you haven't seen this one is excellent. Crimson Rivers in 2000. So that's a good one, guys. Definitely check that out. Next up, we have the actress Adèle Simphal. She plays the role of Angèle Villefort, Gerard's sister. She's been in stuff like In the Woods, which is a 2016 TV movie, Let It Snow, which came out in 2017, and The Best Is Yet to Come, which came out in 2019. So another one that's worked with our actor, our excuse me, that's worked with our directors before. Um, Next up, we have the Abi Faria. Now, the Abi Faria is a fellow prisoner Edmund meets in jail, and he's played by the actor Pier Francesco Favino. Okay. He's been in films like World War Z. So here's one we might recognize in 2013. Another one, Ron Howard, Rush in 2013, The Traitor in 2019, and The Best Years in 2020. So there you go. Every once in a while, I get surprised, get an actor that actually has been in some American films, which doesn't happen too often. It looks like, when at least when I was doing my homework for this film. Um, Anna Marie Bartolome. Again, really sorry butchering her name here, people. She plays the role of Haiti. Haiti is basically a young princess um, whose father was murdered by Fernand, and her mother was murdered as well, and she was sold as a slave. She was sold as a slave into prostitution until much later in the film, when she's rescued by the Count of Monte Cristo. Not to give too much away, but just to give you a little tiny bit of info there, guys. Um, oh, hold on. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so film she's been in is My Little Princess in 2011, Happening in 2021, Traffic in 2024, and Medusa in 2022. All right. Next up, we have a gentleman named Bruno Raphael. He's playing the role, I can make words, guys, I promise, of Morel. Morel is a very kind man and ship owner who employs Edmond Dantes in the ship the Pharaoh. He's a good guy, and he's only in the film briefly, but even though he's only in the film briefly, it's a small but important part. Um, you might know him from the Roman Polanski film, An Officer and a Spy, which came out in 2019, Waiting for Dolly, which came out in 2023, or Shepherds, which came out in 2024. Next up, we have the actor Bernard Blancan. He is playing the role of Lapierre Dantes Edmonds, and he's basically Edmond Dantes' father. He's a servant to the Morcerf family, Bernard and their family, and basically we find out some very sad news, which I'll get to when I get into the plot of the film. He's been in films like Days of Glory, which came out in 2006, Junkyard Dog, which came out in 2023, and Scarlet, which came out in 2022. Next up, we have Vasily Schneider. He is playing the role of Albert de Morcerf. He is the son of Fernand and Mercedes. Again, I don't want to give too much away. When I get into the script, I will give you a little more information about him. Finally, we have Clementine Bayart, who is playing Madame Delfort. She's married to Gerard. Hold on, we got a couple more people. I'm sorry, guys. Julian de Saint Jean. He's playing the role of Andrea. He's the illegitimate son of Gerard de la Fort and Madame Danglars. He basically grew up on the streets as a criminal. The Count finds and recruits him to get revenge. I'll go into that in a little bit. We have Marie Narbonne, who's playing Eugenie Danglars, the daughter of Danglars. She's been in stuff like Winter Crossing in 2023, the film Play in 2019, and the film Mandibles in 2020. All right, guys, so that is our behind the scenes people, our cast and crew. Again, I do apologize. I know I kind of took me a little while to get to where I was going, and I know I butchered some names, so I do apologize, guys. I try not to do my cheat sheet. I try not to look down too much, but unfortunately, it's hard for me to get at a level where it doesn't look quite as obvious. So you do see me looking down at my cheat sheet while I'm going over these names and stuff. Um, so I'm going to do my best to try to describe this guys to you. Again, I'm not going to go beat by beat, page by page. But on the same token, with this particular film, there's just no way I can just give you a quick synopsis. It's just really difficult to do, at least for me. So basically, the film takes place in the year 1815. It takes place from the year 1815 and it goes to 1839. Um, and it starts off, and we're on a ship, and we see um, two ships. One is burning in the water, and pretty much everything's off the ship. And lo and behold, in the water, we see a young woman struggling. Um, we cut to and we see our lead character, a young man, dark hair, piercing eyes. It's Edmond Dantes, and he's about to jump into the water um, to go save her. He's yelled at by a man with blonde hair, lighter hair, with some blonde hair. Um, don't you dare. But he says, screw it. He does it anyway. He jumps into the water. He rescues this woman. He pulls her out, and she's barely alive. And he says, quick, get her a blanket. And, they take the woman and they put the woman in Edmund's room. Um, Meanwhile, we're then introduced to Danglers. Danglers is the ship's captain. He's like, I strictly forbid you from doing that. If I say something, you listen. He's like, I'm a brutal captain, but it's my way. And that's it. And Edmund responds, no, what you said was we couldn't do anything to save the ship. You didn't say anything about me risking my own life to save another's. And of course, Danglers, being a bit of a strict, we'll say, well, I'll just say asshole to the captain, says that's it. From now on, you shall be relegated to the uh, the basement of the ship. I'm looking for the word here. The hold. Yes, the hold. We'll lock him away, and you'll stay in there until we get to Marseille. Um, so Edmund's sent to the hold, the ship. And meanwhile, Danglers approaches this girl, and we learn this girl's name is Angele. And he sees that she has this letter. He's like, what's this? And she looks scared. She's like, that doesn't belong to you. He's like, it does now. And he reads that. He reads the letter and he realizes the letter is a letter from the from the great late, not late as in dead, but the former leader of France, Napoleon. He's like, oh, this will come in handy. And he locks her away in Edmund's room. And then we cut to them arriving at Marseille. And the woman approaches Dangler and she says, I need that letter back. It's of great importance. He's like, I'm sure you do, but that's not happening. He's like, only maybe if you gave me a tremendous amount of money, that might possibly happen. She's like, well, obviously I have no money, but I'm not the type of person you want to cross. I can make life very difficult for you. Now, this is where we get two people with very strong wills because Danglers doesn't back down. He's just like, well, I guess you're not getting the letter back, effectively, that's what he says. And you can see she's kind of very distressed. At this point, um, we see Edmond Dantes come up from the hold and he's let off the ship. And as he's let off the ship, um, he's approached by the young woman. She introduces herself as Angele, and she says, thank you for saving my life. I'm sorry if I might have put you in any trouble or any harm's way at all. You did a brave thing, and it's so greatly appreciated. If there's anything you ever need from me, just reach out to me, and I promise I'll do anything I can to help you. You can see she's just eternally grateful. This man saved her life. She leaves. we cut to the next scene, and we see Edmund being called to the ship owner. And when this is when we're introduced to Mr. Morel. Mr. Morel is a gentleman that's in his early 60s. He looks like somebody's kind old grandpa. He's like, Edmund, come here. And right next to Morel, of course, is Danglars. Danglars has told me uh, there was a shipwreck and a lot of people were dead, ship caught on fire. He said that you did not obey his direct command. Please tell me more about what happened here. And Edmund's straight up with him. He's like, listen, there was a girl that was drowning. I took the opportunity to try to save her life, and I did. I did what was right in my heart, and I think most men would. And Danglars lashes at him and said, you disobeyed a direct command. But then this is when Mr. Morel shows his true character, and he says, listen here, you did the right thing. Danglars, you are fired at this point. Be gone from here. So Danglars walks away. We're setting up the story, guys. He's angry. He's bitter. And we see Mr. Morel, and we see come up to him his grandson, a little kid around 5 or 6, and he introduces him to Edmund. He says, Edmund, I want you to meet my grandson, Maximilian. And he says, Maximilian, this is the new captain of my ship, the Pharaoh. And he's like, Captain? He's like, that's right, Edmund. You've proved yourself out there. You showed your true character. And I'm proud to say you're my next captain. You're a true judgment of character, and obviously Danglars was not the type of person I want in charge of my ship. And Edmund says, oh, I'm honored, sir. I only ask that you give me a little bit of time because I have not seen my father in several months, and I need to go see my father, and I also need to go see my beloved Mercedes. And he's like, oh no, yes, and go spend time with your family. He's like, as long as you're back in 3 months, it's going to take that long to get the ship ready and get ready for our next journey. He's like, you have plenty of time, and Edmund tells him that he's going to propose to his girlfriend, and of course, Mr. Morel is invited. So we go from there, and next thing you know, we see Edmund, and he's on a farm. So it seems like a nice farm, and he's going to the horse stable, and he's very quietly making his way through. And meanwhile, we see this beautiful dark-haired girl brushing a horse, and he goes up to her from behind and gives her a big hug. And she says, hello. And she's, oh, Edmund, I've missed you so. And then they have this big touching reunion. They kiss. He proposes to her, and he tells her the big news. And of course, she's beyond excited at A, to say yes to his marriage proposal, and B, to hear of him becoming a captain. He's 18, she's like 17. They have the whole world in front of them, and they're on cloud nine. They're going to get married tomorrow, actually. So the next scene, we cut to, and we see the same house, same big mansion, not mansion, a big farm though, and we see Edmund approach the people. We come to realize that Edmund's father, whose name I'm going to find out exactly, but just bear with me a second, guys. Uh, uh, come on, bear with me, guys. I'm sorry here. Um, pardon me, guys. Pierre Dantes Edmonds. Okay. So anyway, he goes to find his father. We find out his father is a servant for this family called the Fernand de Morcerf family. Fernand is about Edmund's age. His family is fairly well off. Um, Mercedes is Fernand's cousin, um, and he secretly has a huge crush, beyond crush. He's in love with her. Um, so even though Edmund's father is a servant to the Fernand de Morcerf family, he's treated like he's one of the family. And Edmund grew up on this farm with the people in this family, and they treat him not like a servant, but they treat him like one of them, to a degree. They have a nice lunch. They celebrate his homecoming. He shares with everybody the great news. Then Mercedes enters the room, and he pretends like he hadn't seen her in the barn. And again, he shares the news. Um, at this point, nobody knows that they're engaged. Um, so they have this nice lunch. Next thing we know, there's a scene where Fernand, Edmund, and Mercedes are on this little rowboat in a pond on the property. And Edmund says, "Hey, I have some big news I can't wait to share with you, Fernand." Um, Different than the book, him in this version of the story, Edmund and Fernand are I wouldn't say like brothers, but they're good friends. In the original book, there's definitely an adversarial relationship established from the very get-go. There is no love lost between them. So some slight distinctions. In this one, they're actually buddies. So Edmund goes to tell Fernand, he's like, I have some great news. I can't wait to share with you. I'm going to be getting married tomorrow. And Fernand goes, oh, who? Is it Juliet, the kitchen maid? And Edmund goes, no, this is serious. And of course, Mercedes goes, oh, Juliet, the kitchen maid. I wonder who that is, kind of joking around a little bit. And he goes, no, this girl means so much more to me. She means absolutely everything. I can't see my life without her. And Mercedes responds, oh, she must be really special. And Edmund goes, oh, yes, she is. She's everything to me. And Fernand goes, oh, well, enough with the jesting and the playing around. Tell me who this woman is. And he goes, well, this woman is no other than Mercedes here. Uh, and then at that point, Fernand goes, oh, well, congratulations. You know, but then a moment later, his face sours. And you can see in a second, he's both heartbroken, but there's just a look of sheer arrogance and anger. And he's just doing his best to disguise it. So we go from that scene. And again, guys, I'm trying not to do it beat by beat. The reason I'm doing it a little bit more detail, like the way I used to do it, guys, is because there's a lot to establish and there's a lot going on in this film. And I think it is important. So that's the reason I'm going to a little more detail, just so you guys know. Again, so we go to that scene. The next scene we see wedding day, and we have Edmund at the altar with Mercedes. Everyone's there. Fernand is right by his side, and all of a sudden we see the local guard in Marseille approach, and they go, "Hello, we're looking for a man." And they're like, "Yes, who are you looking for?" "Looking for a man by the name of Mr. Edmond Dantes." And Edmond Dantes looks and goes, "Me? What could you possibly want with me? A simple sailor." And he goes, "You will find out." And they bring him to the local magistrate, the local lawman, local prosecutor, I guess, if you will. Um, and this is where we're introduced to Gerard Delafort. And Gerard brings him into his office and goes, "Unfortunately, Mr. Edmond Dantes, I apologize to interrupt you on your wedding day. I'm sure your wife will be very upset with me, but hopefully we can clear this up rather quickly. I know you're good friends with Mr. Fernand de Morcerf and their family, and any friend of the Morcerf family is a friend of mine, but there is a serious matter that we must discuss." And he goes, "On the ship, the Pharaoh, I heard uh, that you were put down below uh, after an incident. You were detained." And Edmund goes, "Yes, I unfortunately had an unfortunate argument with the captain, uh, Captain Danglars. There was a ship that was wrecked in a fire in the middle of the water, and I rescued a woman, and Captain Danglars was not happy with that, so he put me down below until we reached Marseille." And Gerard Defoe goes, "Oh well, unfortunately, um, in your room inside this Bible, we found a note." Edmund goes, "A note? What do you mean a note?" And Gerard opens the note, and in the note, there's a letter from Napoleon, basically telling people to rally up the troops because he's coming off the island of Elba and he's going to come back to take his rightful place in the government. And Mr. Delfort goes, "Well, we found this in your room. How do you explain this?" And Edmund's like, "Well, I don't know. I was detained down below in the hold in the ship, so I have no idea how that got there. They did put the woman, I believe her name was Angele, in the cabin, like my particular room when I was detained down below on the ship. But that's the only thing I can think of." And Gerard's face lights up when he hears the name Angele. "Angele, you say?" And he's like, "Yes, that was the name of the young woman that we rescued." And he's like, "Okay, well, I have to talk to some more people. I have to talk with other people involved." Um, so they send Edmund to the next room over. And in the meanwhile, we see two shipmates. We're introduced to Caderousse, who is a shipmate on the Pharaoh. And then we also see Captain Danglars, or at this point, former Captain Danglars. And there's a discussion being had. And then the next thing you know, we see some papers being signed. Now, we don't really hear much of the discussion. They exit the room, and then Fernand de Morcerf comes in, and Villefort says, "I know I'm friends with your family, and I know you know Mr. Dantes, but Captain Danglars and Caderousse attest that they found this letter from Napoleon inside Edmond Dante's room inside this Bible. Um, this is a very serious matter. I know you, and you're a good judge of character. You've known this Edmund for most of your life. Is that not true?" And Fernand goes, "Yes, I have. I have." He's like, "Do you attest that this man is innocent and this is something that he would not do?" And Fernand goes, "Well, I know Edmund, but if you found this piece of paperwork inside his cabin, inside this Bible, you say, and it's from Napoleon, who am I to argue with such facts, such evidence?" Uh, so next thing you know, we see him signing some paperwork as well, and then he leaves. We cut to, and we see some guards, and the guards take Edmund. They grab Edmund and goes, "Edmund, are we finally? Am I finally free to go?" And I, my my future wife must be missing me terribly. Everyone must be worried. I've been gone for so long. And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go, all right." And they put him in shackles and they bring him to the Chateau d'If, which is a prison on an island off of Marseille, not too far off of Marseille. Um, and that, my friends, is the beginning of our tale. Now, again, I'm trying to give you important facts. This is very spoilery, I do realize. Um, so, in the meantime, of course, Mercedes is worried. Fernand says there's nothing he can do. Um, we cut to the prison, uh, and we see Edmund suffering. A year goes by, 2 years goes by. He's scraggly. He looks 10 years older. He came in at 18, 2 years have gone by, and he looks horrible and wrought with grief. One day he hears a scratching on the wall and he thinks he's going mad. He's like, what is that? And he's introduced as a sound of a stone gets knocked from the prison wall. An old man comes out and he's like, hello, who are you? And we're introduced to the character of the Abbe Ferrari. Uh, Now, the Abbe Ferrari is a gentleman that was put in jail many, many years ago, a political prisoner, for conspiring against the government. That's the short version. I don't want to go into the entire history. Um, him and Edmund become friends. He tells Edmund how he's been tunneling out of the prison because he's determined through his tunneling on his own that eventually, if he goes in the right direction, it'll lead to water. And he says, with Edmund's help, between the two of them, they can tunnel through and get out and escape together. Meanwhile, they have deep, meaningful conversations. Edmund explains what happens, um, and he explains that he was put here unjustly, and when he gets out, he's going to seek justice and revenge for the people that wronged him, that ruined his life. And the Abbe Ferrari, like he's an older guy in his 70s. He's like, well, in order to do that, you need the right tools. And he goes, the tools? He's like, yes, the right mental tools. He's like, I know you're a sailor, but I can teach you to read and write several languages. I can teach you about math and science. And he's like, I can teach you about the world of aristocrats and high society and how to fit into that world. So that's what he does. For several years, they tunnel away, trying to find their way through this wall so they can break out. And in the meanwhile, um, they get more educated. He becomes more knowledgeable so they can figure out what he's going to do when he gets out. Well, one day they reach a point in the tunnel, and the Abbey hits a part of the ceiling that he's tunneling, and he hears a drip of water, and he goes, "That's water. That's salt water." He's like, "We're only a couple days away, and we will both be free men." And they're both ecstatic with joy. Then all of a sudden, of course, fate kicks in, and the ceiling comes crumbling down, and it caves in, and unfortunately, most of it falls on the Abbey Ferrari. Edmund pulls him to safety in his jail cell. But you can see the Abbey Ferrari is in bad shape. And he goes, Edmund, unfortunately, my time on this earth is not much longer. He's like, but before I die, I must tell you something that will make a world of difference in your life. And Edmund goes, no, don't say that, Abbey Ferrari. I am your friend. I will keep you alive. We will survive together and thrive in this world. You will help me seek my revenge. And Abbey Ferrari goes, no, we don't have time for that. I don't have much time left in me. It's like, there's something I must tell you, and it is of great importance. It's like, before I was on this island, I worked for a sacred group of knights in France, a secret order, and they had one thing that had been passed down from generation to generation. It was this treasure that they had seized many years ago, and they put it on the island of Monte Cristo. He's like, as a sailor, you might have heard of the name. And Edmonds go, yes, I've heard of it. I've never been there. He's like, well, it's off of such and such. And he gives them basically poor man's directions on how to get there. He's like, this treasure has been there hidden for many years. It was passed down to me when the last knight of this sacred order died. He's like, I'm going to tell you exactly how to get to it so that you can continue You're tunneling on the to get out, and then you will have everything at your disposal, this vast treasure to help you seek your revenge against these men. So from there, Edmund drags his body, because he unfortunately passes. He drags his body back to his cell, and he hears the local guards come to drop off dinner. And he ducks back into the wall, and they yell out Abby Ferrera's name. Abby, dinner time. And of course, there's no response. So they go down into his cell, and they realize the Abby Ferrera has passed. They get another man, and they get a burlap sack bag, and they stuff the man's body into the bag and sew it up. Then they leave. Edmund looks in, realizes this might be his opportunity to get out. Because keep in mind, the tunnel is partially collapsed, the one he had been working on with Abby Ferrari. So what he does is he takes Abby Ferrara's body out of the sack. He places him in his cell on his bunk and covers him with a blanket. And then he climbs into the burlap sack and sews it back up. A short while later, the guards come to get the body. And then they make a comment about, oh man, he must have been really gained some weight in his later years. I don't remember him being this heavy. And they take him to the edge of the Chateau d'If, and they toss him into the water. And just as they're tossing him into the water, another guard is going in to check in on Edmund. Realizes Edmund's not there and sounds the alarm. But at this point, it's too late because Edmund had just been thrown into the water. Edmund, burlap sack, thrown into the water. Luckily, he had managed to make some sort of poor man's knife while in the cell with Abby, and he slits it open and he manages to escape. He swims back to Marseille, exhausted, out of breath. And the first place he does is he goes back to the Morcerf farm, because at this point he has no idea. The only one he thinks might have something to do with his jailing is Danglars, because he had a dispute with Danglars. So he goes straight to the Morcerf family farm. Now, mind you now, something to be very clear here, guys, 14 years have gone by. He goes to the Morcerf family farm. He's wearing prison clothes. He sees some clothes hanging on in the wind to dry. So he grabs the clothes and puts them on. And an old maid comes out. And she's like, "What are you doing on this property? What do you want?" Not recognizing him at all. And he goes, "Yes, I'm looking for my father, Le Pierre Dantes." And she goes, "Le Pierre Dantes?" He's like, "He died years ago. He starved to death." And what do you mean he starved to death? She's like, "Yes, he starved to death. He died from a broken heart. His poor son died many years ago. He was jailed and imprisoned and then died. And people tried to help him, but he starved himself out of grief." He's like, and you can see how heartbroken he is. And he's like, "What about Fernand or Mercedes?" He's like, "Oh, Fernand, yes, Fernand hasn't been in here in years. Him and Mercedes, when the young Dantes was imprisoned, him and Mercedes got married and they moved to Paris." So all of a sudden he's taking in all this information. She's like, unfortunately, I can't have you just hanging around here. It's like, I'll give you a meal, you have the clothes, but you must leave. So now he has a little information at his disposal. We see him steal a small sailing ship, little tiny one, and he sets sail to the island of Monte Cristo. We see him. And by the way, there's a beautiful score. That's the one person I should have written down. I didn't write down. Beautiful little score in this movie. Beautiful score, kicks up. He arrives at the island of Monte Cristo. He follows the directions that the Abbe Ferrari gave him. And he comes across this statue. And it looks like a statue that's built into the side of this this cliff wall. And most people just look at it and say it's a statue. But he knows from Happy Ferrari, and he presses a button on the back of a, well, he presses on a part of the statue in the back of the statue, and of course, it opens up a door into a cave. And he goes into this cave and he lights a torch, and he sees the treasure of Monte Cristo. And this is when the light bulb clicks off, and he realizes he has everything at his disposal to seek revenge about what happened to him and how his life was just drastically changed. He's a man out for vengeance. He's out for revenge. He's out for justice. His whole world was taken away from him, and he's not going to take it, guys. He's the Charles Bronson of 1800 France, except without a gun or machine gun or anything like that. But so now we cut to a year later in the story, and we see in Marseille walking down the street a ragged old man with robes and a cane and a limp, and he enters a bar, and we see a guy that's in his 30s, but he probably looks like more like he's in his mid 40s, and we recognize him. We recognize him as a character named Caderousse from earlier in the story. And the old man walks up to him and he goes, "Hello, are you a Caderousse?" And the guy's like, "Yes." And he's like, "How can I help you?" And he's like, "I am Father Busani, and I need to speak to you." And he's like, uh, "I'm here to give you something." And he opens up a little wallet with 3 diamonds that are about that big. And he goes, "Did you once upon a time know an Edmond Dantes?" And he's like, "Yes." He's like, "Well, Edmond Dantes on his dying bed said to give this to Mr. Caderousse." He said to give this to Mr. Caderousse and to ask him some questions. And Mr. Caderousse is like, "Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not deserving of anything." And he's like, "Why? What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm not a true friend to Edmund." And Abi Busani goes, "What do you mean you are not a true friend? Please tell me more." And Caderousse is kind of embarrassed. He's like, "I'm too embarrassed to say this. It breaks my heart what I did, what I idly did. I stood by and watched happen." And Father Busani goes, "I'm a father, one of the cloth. You can tell me." Now, something to know here, guys. This Abi Busani, he's secretly Edmond Dantes, like Count of Monte Cristo, dressed up very well in disguise. But anyway, back to story. So he says, "You can tell me anything." And he tells them, he says, "Well, 14 years ago, on the day of his marriage, I went to see Mr. Gerard de Lefort, the local magistrate, along with Captain Danglars of the ship, the Pharaoh. I was a shipmate on the Pharaoh, and I watched Captain Danglars implicate Edmond Dantes in a crime he did not commit. He took a note. He took a note that he had found off a girl that Edmond rescued, and he said that that belonged to Edmund. The note basically saying, like I mentioned earlier, that he was part of a group to try to bring Napoleon back into power. And he goes, I was part of that with Captain Danglars. Not only that, we were not the only party, but then Edmond Nantes' friend, Fernand de Morcerf, also said that if they found the note in Edmund's cabinet, that then Edmund was a guilty party and he should be punished. And he said that's not fair. The only reason Fernand did that was because he was secretly in love with Mercedes, Edmund's betrothed. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, guys, and this is my own fault. After that scene played out, originally, when I told you about that, a young woman came to see Gerard Deepthorpe. And that woman was Angeal, the woman that Edmund had saved on the ship. Um, Angeal confronts Gerard, her brother, Gerard Deepthorpe, and she goes, "You are putting away an innocent man. That is not true what Captain Dangler said. That note belonged to me, not Edmund." And Gerard goes, "I know that because when they said they captured or they rescued a girl named Angeal, I figured it was you because I know you're a Napoleon sympathizer. I burned the note to save you, to save your hide." And Angeal goes, "Well, don't save my hide. This note did not belong to Edmund. Get him out of jail immediately." And Gerard says, "No, what's done is done." And she goes to him and she says, "Listen, Gerard, if you don't get Edmund out of jail, I'm going to tell everyone that you had an affair with Madame Danglars' wife. Not only did you have an affair, but apparently she's pregnant." So at this point, Gerard Delafort is furious. He has Danglars take her, and Danglars takes this opportunity and, and sells Angeal to a local thug, and she becomes a prostitute. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, guys, and that's something that I forgot, so I apologize. But since it's coming up again in this particular point in the movie, this is my opportunity to correct that. So here we go. Um, so you see from this, guys, that Catarus, he has this tremendous guilt um, for his part because while he wasn't directly involved in incriminating Edmund, he stood by and went along with it. He's a guilty party. But Edmund says, "Okay, well," or under the role of Happy Busani, he goes, "Okay, well, you did the right thing by telling this to me. Here, take your inheritance." He says, "No, I don't want it. I don't deserve it." And he goes, "Listen, someday I'm going to call upon you to help repent for your sins." And then he leaves. Now, we cut to 2 years later, and it's Paris. Uh, and we see, hold on a second, guys. We see a bunch of the gang all together. Gerard Delafort. Um, we see Fernand, and we see Danglars, and we see Fernand at a ceremony. They're all there, and he's being awarded a very special medal because he was a soldier in the army with France, and he's being awarded a special trophy, a special medal of honor, essentially. And we find out that Fernand is going to enter the world of politics. Well, Fernand leaves this special ceremony with his wife, which is now Mercedes, and we're introduced to his son, Albert de Morcerf, and they get in this buggy. They get halfway down the road. They're having a nice discussion, and someone breaks into the buggy and they steal the medal from Fernand. His son Albert gets out of the buggy. He chases the criminal down 3 blocks. He gets into a dark alleyway, and then all of a sudden he realizes he's surrounded by 6 to 7 men, all ready to basically beat the living crap out of him. The odds are against him, and we don't think he's going to make it. But lo and behold, a dark figure emerges, dressed in all black, tall hat. He looks like he's a badass, and we see this intense fight scene where the Count of Monte Cristo emerges out of the shadows, disguised with a mustache and things, enough characteristics to make it look that he's not only aged, but he looks different. Not that it would matter anyway, because Albert never knew the original Edmond Dantes. So basically, the Count rescues Albert, and Albert is incredibly gracious. Uh, the two exchange names. Albert introduces him. He introduces him to his father, and invites him to his family. His father, Fernand de Morcerf, thanks him. He introduces him to Mercedes, who's taken aback because you can tell right off the get go, she kind of recognizes him to a certain degree. Um, and he's also introduced to uh, Danglars again. He's reintroduced to Danglars for the first time. Um, and he's introduced to Gerard Delefort, the chief prosecutor. We find out that since his time in Marseille, Delefort has become the chief prosecutor in Paris. And we find out Danglars has become a very successful banker. And like I said, we realize that Fernand de Morcerf has not only married Mercedes, he's had a son, Albert, and he's entering the world of politics. So they've all kind of come up since the 14 years ago when they were young 18, 19-year-old people, and they become adults, and they moved up in the world of high society, if you will. Um, so just give me a second here, guys. I'm going to just take a sip of water here. Um, the next scene, um, we see uh, we see Edmund go to visit uh, a woman that's in her early 40s. She's a prostitute. She's sick on a bed. And he approaches her and he goes, "Hello, are you Angel?" She goes, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I'm not doing well," something to that effect, essentially. And he goes, "Young Angel, maybe you know me. I am Edmund." She's like, "Edmund, I thought you had died." And he goes, "No, I have not died. I'm here. I just found out what happened to you. And I'm so sorry. You tried to save me." And she's like, "Unfortunately, it's too late for me." He's like, "But I can help you at your quest for revenge." And she tells him about how basically she tried to go to bat for him. She tried to convince Delafort, her brother Gerard, to release him from prison. And this is what happened to her. She also tells him about how she tried to blackmail her brother. She tells him about how Danglars sold her into prostitution as a slave. And she tells him that not that long ago, or about 5 or 6 years ago, she managed to escape from this role as a slavery prostitute. Um, and when she escaped, she um, went back to her brother's villa to try to seek revenge. She was going to kill him. And basically, as she was approaching the yard, she saw her brother come out into the garden holding a basket. And from that basket was a sound of a baby crying. And then she watched as her brother put this baby in a little chest, dig a hole, and then bury the hole. So she watched her brother bury his illegitimate baby alive. Um, and then she decided at that point what was more important, revenge or saving this child, this dying child. So she opted to save this dying child. She dug him up, and she tried to raise the child as her own, but unfortunately, shortly thereafter, um, she was captured again, and the baby was sent to an orphanage. Sorry, guys. Um, when the baby was sent to an orphanage, he eventually got out and survived on the streets, and basically became a criminal, doing whatever he had to do to survive. She's like, "Please find him. His name is Andrea. Find him and rescue him. Give him the life that he deserves. He did not deserve that life." So on her dying deathbed, that's what Edmund does. He gets Andrea from this orphanage, um, and basically he informs Andrea who his real father is. He informs Andrea that he also wants revenge on this man. Um, so he takes Andrea into his home in Paris, and then we see him track down a young woman that's of 18 to 19 years old. Her name is Haiti. Uh, Haiti was a man that was wronged by Fernand de Morcerf. Basically, during the war, when Fernand was still a young soldier, uh, Haiti's father, the Ali Pasha, was a great leader, took him in when he was injured, um, and gave him housing. And in return, Fernand shot Ali Pasha, shot his wife, and then sold Haiti into slavery. So he gets Haiti and brings her back to his place in Paris, and he explains to both of them how he was wronged by Fernand de Morcerf, um, and how he was wronged, um, by everyone in his story, like, and how he wants to seek revenge and he wants to use them. And he explains to them what he's going to do. He wants Haiti to seduce Fernand and Mercedes' son Albert, and he wants uh, Andrea to seduce Dangler's daughter Eugenie. And basically, he's going to destroy these people's lives. But he's not going to just destroy these people's lives by killing them. He's going to make these people's lives miserable. He's going to he's going to make them squirm. He's going to make it hurt. He's going to make them suffer for the injustice from what he's been through. Um, and effectively, guys, um, the rest of the movie is just that, the story of how Edmond Dantes seeks his revenge. Um, and we go from one scene to another just doing that. Now, at this point, I'm going to go a little bit more, but I'm not going to go too much more, guys, because I do want this movie is one of the better adaptations. There are a lot of changes from the book. Um, people, especially people that read the book, there are a lot of changes from the book, but there are some really excellent changes. There are changes that are effective from an almost an 1,100 page book, and taking that and converting that into just under a 3 hour movie. Things that are important, they because there's a lot of subplots in the original novel, and especially in the unabridged novel. So obviously, when you're translating that onto the big screen, you're going to see some huge changes. Um, so they had to change a lot, but effectively, at this point in the story, Edmund, or just call him the Count at this point, he has his chess pieces in place, um, and from there it turns into uh, manipulating people and making their lives miserable. Um, he hold on one second, guys. I'm on a little notebook issue here. I'll just get a second to boot up. Basically, he invests money in Danglers because Danglers is a banker, so he invests all of his money. But he tells Danglers, he said, "I want an unlimited credit limit." Uh, and Danglers is in shock. By the way, what do you mean unlimited? He's like, "No, I just want unlimited. I have a vast fortune." Um, so he starts that relationships with him. Um, then uh, he uh, he also tells Danglers that he introduces him to Andrea Calvinci, and he says this is an aristocrat's son from Italy who has a vast fortune, and to a he's looking to marry his son off to a French person of high society. Um, so he basically manipulates all of them in different ways. Um, he gets he gets Danglers to invest all his money into this one stock that he think is this one shipment of goods being moved by ships because he thinks he can buy it cheap now, and then it's gonna boost up, and the opposite happens because the Count manages to have these ships disappear. So basically, Danglars goes to court to sue um, the person that told him this information, which is this person that works for a newspaper, gave him this inside cue about this, um, and basically he goes to sue this guy, and the guy that works from this company, the Halifax company, is supposed to show up, and he doesn't. Um, all of a sudden, Andrea, the young Italian aristocrat who's just secretly a criminal, stands up and he says, "I represent the Halifax company," and he goes, "Yes, those ships really were kidnapped. Those ships really were disappeared, but then they came back, and and this is all factual. You you you're lying. I did not misrepresent this company." Um, and he's like, "I wish my true name to be known here." And they all look at him. We're like, "What are you talking about? Your true name?" He's like, "Andrea Calavinci is the name I go by, but my real name is Andrea de la Forte, and my father is Gerard de la Forte." And he tells the whole courtroom this story about how he's the illegitimate son of Gerard de la Forte and Madame Danglars, uh, Minjo, Mr. Danglars' wife, Madame Danglars, basically. And the whole court is in shock. They're like, "What is this?" Um, and he says, "We're going to have to investigate this further. We need more evidence." So the court's dismissed. And of course, Madame Danglars, excuse me a second, guys. Madame Danglars is in shock. You can see the look on her face. Gerard Delaford is in shock. Uh, and of course, Andrea Calvinci is just enraged. He follows Gerard Delafort down the courtroom hallway out into the main foyer, and he takes a dagger and he stabs them in the neck. And he goes, "This is for Angeal, who tried to save me and look after me when all you did was disregard me." So at this point, um, Hades goes up to uh, Edmund, Mr. Count. She goes, "You did this. You did this to him. You manipulated him, just like you're manipulating me." Because at this point, Edmund's using Mercedes to try to win over Albert, just so that she can eventually break his heart. Because he's just fucking with everybody. He's fucking with the Morcerfs. He's fucking with the Villeforts. He's fucking with Dangler's family. And she goes, "When will it end? How far will you go?" And he's like, "What is this about?" And he's like, "I told you what it's about." She's like, "Revenge?" She's like, "No, it's not just revenge. It's justice." Um, but you can see she's rather upset. We also find out that she's also starting to have feelings for Albert, like real feelings. At first, she was just going along with it because Albert's father, Fernand, killed her mother and father. But now we realize she's starting to have real feelings towards him. So, of course, Edmund the Count watches Villefort go down. Danglars, he approaches and he says, "I'm assuming you have all my money?" And Dangler's like, "No, I lost everything. I invested everything and it's all gone." And he's like, "Well, I suggest you leave in exile so you don't embarrass your wife and daughter no longer." So he actually does, in this version of the story, he does show a little sympathy towards Danglers. I mean, not a lot. In the book, trust me, it's a lot worse, guys. And I don't want to get into that right now, but the book's a lot darker. Danglers just disappears. Um, you can see that Mercedes is upset, and he tries to talk to her, and he said, "This is the plan all along. The plan was to destroy these people's lives, to make them pay for what they did to me." and you can see she's upset. She's like, "Well, this is what we agreed to." And she's like, "I know, but I think you've taken it too far." And he's like, "Did they take it too far when Fernand killed your mother and father?" And she could see she's just kind of like really upset. Later that evening, she writes a heartfelt note to Albert, basically telling him, "Hey, listen, I really care about you, but this can't happen right now. I'm sorry. You're better off not being in my life." It's very vague, the letter. He gets the letter. He's heartbroken. Um, he runs to the Count's villa, and effectively he confronts um, Haiti, and and he's like, "I don't understand." She's like, "I can't explain it. All I can tell you is we can't do this." And he's like, "I love you, and tell me that you don't love me, and I'll go away forever." It's like, "No, I do love you." Then that's it. Well, let's just how with this? I love you. You love me. Let's just run away together. And she like agrees. She's fine. Let's be gone from here. Um, they go to run away, and they get a little bit down the property, and they're stopped by the Count. And the Count is like, "What is going on here?" He's like, "Haiti, if you do not tell this man, I will." And she says, "Fine." And you can see she's upset, but she tells him, she says, "Look," she's like, "Listen, this is what happened." And she tells him the story about what Albert's father, Fernand, did to her family. And Fernand's in disbelief. He can't believe, like, he's like, "How? What do you mean? This is ridiculous." And he gets upset with Edmund, and he's like, "I will not stand for this kind of talking shit about my family." He's like, "I challenge you to a duel, pistols tomorrow at dawn." Because he's trying to defend the family name. He thinks his father is a hero. Fernand's this great war hero, and the Count's like, "Sure, fine, tomorrow, pistols at dawn." So he leaves, angry. Hades upset. Meanwhile, later that evening, much later, Mercedes comes back in to the picture. She shows up at Count of Monte Cristo's house. She walks in the door. She goes, "Edmund, I must speak with you." And the Count goes, "Well, who is this? What do you want? And who's this Edmund that you speak of? I do not know what you speak of." She's like, "Yes, you do. I've known since the minute I first saw you, your voice, your mannerisms. You could not disguise who you are. You are Edmond Dantes. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to my family?" And he goes, "Why am I doing this to your family? What have you and Fernand done to me? Have you not, did you not wait for me? You just forgot about me and married this man." She goes, "I waited for you. I waited for you for many years before I moved on. And I cried for you and I grieved for you." And he goes, "You do not know what this man and other men have done to me." And then he pulls out a letter, and the letter is the confession that Fernand wrote when he was in the office with Gerard de la Forte, basically stating how Edmund was the true owner of the letter that was to Napoleon, basically saying that Edmund was a traitor to the government, and to turn Edmund in. And of course, Mercedes is in shock by that, and he tells her about what Danglars did and his part and everything, and he tells him about de la Force, and he basically gives her the lowdown on what's going on. And of course, she's in disbelief, and she goes, "I'm sorry. I waited and I loved you. And yes, I would have wanted that to happen. And if you want to hate me and you want to take your revenge on me and everyone else, that's fine. But Albert did nothing. Please spare him." and he promises he'll spare her. So the next day, it's dawn, and they're getting ready to pistol the dawn. They're walking their paces over. He's over here. He's over there, and Edmund just drops his gun to the ground, and Albert is in shock by this, and he goes to shoot, but he misses Edmund clearly on purpose. And next thing you know, we see um, Edmund arrive back at his villa, and he gets out of his buggy, and Mercedes waiting on the steps, and she said, "So it is done. You killed him." He's like, "Why don't you see for yourself?" And out of the carriage walks Albert, and he says, "My mother told me everything that happened, and I'm so incredibly sorry. I was wrong to try to instigate anything. The Count is innocent. My father is someone who I'll have to make up his horrible crime, his reputation stain he's put on our family forever to come." And Albert goes up to Haiti, and he hugs her and kisses her, and they reunite. And Edmund says, "Go and be happy and live a good life." And they get into the buggy and they take off. Um, Next thing you know, we see the Count back at his inside of his house, and in comes Fernand with a rapier, and he comes to the door, ra- he's screaming, "Edmund! Finally, I know who you are. You have taken everything from me. My son, my wife has left me. I'm left with nothing. And I find out who my enemy is. You will die." Being a little dramatic, guys, but it's effectively this. And they have this moment of confrontation. And effectively, they have this big, nice little sword fight. Uh, and of course, in the very end, when we think our hero, Edmund, Mr. Count of Monte Cristo, is about to be overcome, he thwarts Fernand, and Fernand falls to the ground. And then the movie ends, and we see Mercedes in the church, and she's reading a letter, and she's given a letter, and it's from Edmund, and she's like, "I can't change." Effectively, "I'm sorry that we can't change the past. I'm sorry for everything that's happened. Um, we can't we can't get back together. Obviously, all we can do is live our lives, and I want you to live the best life that you can. And just remember two words that were no truer words spoken, and that is in the language, which is wait and hope. That's all we can do is wait and hope. Um, your best regards, love, Edmund, Count of Monte Cristo." So effectively, we get we get this. They don't get back together, obviously, and but they leave knowing that, like, hey, she understands where he's coming from. They can't just get back together, and they might have feelings for each other and they might love each other, but it just wasn't meant to be, you know. And meanwhile, we see Edmund on his ship, and he's basically in the letter. He's saying, I'm gonna get out and explore the world a little, and the vastness of the ocean, take in the world, you know. But you see, the reason they can't get back together is he's still hurt by everything. I think in the end of the day, after everything's said and done, um, he does get the revenge he wants on these people, but he also learns to kind of do more than just that. It's not just revenge. Just bear with me for a second, guys, because I have my thoughts a little more organized written down here. Bear with me. Uh, Hang tight for a second here. You realize it's about finding redemption in himself. Um, and I think that's a powerful part of what the book was about. It's a powerful part about what the movie's about. Yes, he got revenge on the people that deserved it. Um, but he also, in the process of getting revenge, he realizes what he became. And um, there's nothing to be gained other than the revenge when all you're doing is seeking revenge. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there is no redemption for your soul. At a certain point, he learns the redemption comes by forgiving and moving past what happened. He can't forget what happened. The people destroyed his life, but he can move forward. Um, what's interesting in the original novel, so in the original novel, not much is different. Well, there's a lot of different. Okay, obviously there's a lot of subplots because it's an 1,100-page book, so you get a lot of subplots that are important, by the way. Um, this thing right here distills everything into just under 3 hours, and I think it does a really good job of it. But the book has a lot of important subplots. In the ending of the book, he ends up actually with Haiti, of all people. I think, respect where they both came from in their lives, what they've been through, and they find love for each other. So he does get a little bit more of a relationship. I think the way this movie ending is like that he has to find himself a little more. He got his revenge, but he also realized in the process of how what an evil person he became in order to get his revenge, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to find my words here, guys. I'm trying to find my words. He's trying to find, he's trying to forgive these people and try to find redemption for himself. Um, so that's why I think ending with by telling her wait and hope, those are words of wisdom, and exploring the world in the vast sea on a ship where he doesn't have to come in contact with many people and just kind of find himself and become a new person so he can start life over again, if that makes sense. Um, he's still growing as a person. Um, like I said, the book ends. I feel like he does that a little bit earlier. And like I said, him and Haiti end up together. Um, and there's a love that's built there. Um, so this, like I said, I think as far as the adaptations go, like I said, there's 29 different between just in television, film, stuff like that. Sorry, guys. Stuff like that. This version, guys, I think does a pretty good job. The acting is top notch. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with any of the actors. Same thing with the directors. I wasn't familiar with any of the directors or the composer or anybody. I think it's really beautifully shot. Um, I think it's dark. I do think there's an arc here that where you care about the characters and the journey they're going on. I think it's really good, guys. I know, again, I'm biased because I love the novel, um, but I've seen a lot of different versions adapted for television and film. Um, I think you care about the characters, and I think it does a really good job, guys. I think it does a really good job of capturing the essence of what the book is. Like I said, there are some other versions that are worth checking out. The 1975 version, like I mentioned, that's worth checking out. The 1979 version is also worth checking out. You know, and like I said, hopefully we'll have that mini series with Sam Claflin and Jeremy Irons premiering here in America very soon. Fingers crossed. Um, yeah, guys, I have a lot of love for this property, like I said. And like I said, I went in apprehensive, like I do with every adaptation that I've seen of the novel. And there are, like I said, there are some changes that were made. Um, but I think they did a really good job. I think they really like I said, from a technical perspective, I think it was well shot, and the acting, like I said, it was well done, and I think they managed to get what's important from the book. Um, I tried to explain this the best I could, guys. I know I was doing it beat for beat more than I would have liked, but like I said, it's really hard to boil this down into a quick synopsis or even a medium length synopsis. Hopefully, I did an okay job, and you guys enjoyed this. Um, that wraps up the show for today, guys. I'm hoping to have a new episode out this week. It's either going to be the independent film by Jamin Wayans um, from 2009, the film Ink, or I'm going to be tackling The Great Escape. I'm hoping to do one of those this week. Um, can't make any promises, but I'm hoping to. And then next Tuesday, Rob and Joe from Caliber 9 from Outer Space were kind enough to have me on, and we're going to be talking about two movies. And I won't spoil that. I'll keep that a surprise. Um, if you haven't seen their show, check out Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Rob and Joe each week. They have a great show. It's like a little drive-in format almost. They have their A movie and their B movie, and they have a lot of fun, and they have some great guests, and they have some really good discussions, and they talk about a lot of interesting films. So definitely check out Caliber 9 from Outer Space. Of course, be sure to check out Brad and Troy from Not a Bomb. Not a Bomb podcast is a really interesting podcast. What they do, guys, is they take a look at films that were a bomb, either critically or commercially at the box office, and they determine if they're really worthy of the word bomb. You know, because a lot of times films maybe they shit the box when it comes to the finances and what they made, but maybe there's actually a good film there. You know. So they ask that question every week, and they do a really wonderful job. So check out the Not a Bomb podcast. Definitely highly recommended. Of course, The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Will and Sam. These guys are awesome, such a huge inspiration. Again, another podcast for every week. They give us a really great film. Sometimes it's a mainstream film. You know, sometimes it's an more obscure film. They do indie cinema, foreign films, new films, old films. They run the gamut. And again, just a really wonderful podcast. Next up, Jose with Watch Skip Plus. Now, I love Jose. He's a great guy, and he's on my show once a month, and I love him having him along with Justin. Watch Skip Plus. They cover the stuff that's playing currently in the theaters. They're on a little bit of a hiatus, but I am assured by Jose that they will be back. I want to say he said either the 17th or the 19th of January. I think he said the 17th of January. So check out their back catalog of episodes for Watch Skip Plus and look forward to a new episode coming soon. So that's Watch Skip Plus. And of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning my boys over at Raiders of the Podcast. Raiders of the Podcast, these guys are amazing. We have such a great group of guys. Each week they talk about two different films and they determine which one is the better of the two, if you will. And like I said, they another podcast where they talk about just such a wide variety of different films. So check out Raiders of the Podcast. They actually just released a new episode today, so that's something to look forward to. And like I said, guys, that wraps up my episode for today. Like I said, hoping to have another episode out by the end of the week. And then also, like I said, next Tuesday you can catch me. Well, the episode won't be out next Tuesday, but I'll be recording a new episode with the Caliber 9 guys from Outer Space. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Um, I tried my best to try to nail the tone of the film, give you guys a taste of what you're going to get. Like I said, I do think it's one of the better adaptations. I think it's worth your time, and I hope you enjoy it. And I look forward to talking to you guys very soon.